and welcome to Myth Monsters. My name is Erin and I'll be your host for these little snack bite-sized podcasts on folklore and mythical monsters from around the world. These podcasts focus on the actual cryptids, folklore and mythic monsters from global mythology, rather than focusing on the full stories of heroes and their big adventures. I'll also be dropping in some references that they have to recent culture and where you can see these represented in modern day content so that you can learn more and get as obsessed as I am about these absolute legends of the mythological world. Happy New Year and welcome to Season 6 of Myth Monsters podcast. If you're a new listener or a returning one, thank you so much for tuning in. It's a new year, it's a new me. So thanks for picking up with me. This year I am picking up the once a week format thing again, as I've figured my life out a little bit, so I hope you're ready for some cool monsters that I've got prepped in this year's running order. If you sent me any recommendations, they will be in this year's running order, so super exciting, and stay tuned for the ones you've sent through. We're kicking off the new year with a special one, and as a certified gamer, one that links to my favourite hobby. To celebrate the release of Season 2 of Fallout, this week we are looking at the deformed Ghouls from the Fallout universe. Before we start, I'm aware that we're starting with a bit of fiction, I know, and just to stress, this is fiction, but you never know how accurate Fallout would actually be. So maybe this is more of a warning as to what would happen to those who wouldn't die in the atomic blast from a nuke, as to what would happen if World War III actually broke out, which, based on the world right now, actually wouldn't surprise me. Anyway, what is a ghoul? A ghoul is described as a post-human. They used to be normal people, but have now taken on so much radiation over time, or from an initial nuclear bomb explosion, that they start to mutate from the exposure. They are just normal people in the wrong place at the wrong time. So they act as usual human beings in a wasteland scenario, I suppose. Over a short amount of time, the person will have the usual effects of radiation poisoning, such as vomiting, diarrhea, hair loss, internal bleeding, but will then find their flesh starts to actively melt off or hollow out, usually around their noses, eyes, and ears, giving them a ghoulish appearance, hence the name. Their outward appearance may end up looking like a noseless mutant with skin resembling tanned leather, or a burn victim, or rotting zombie with exposed muscle, blood vessels, and in extreme cases, even bone and internal organs. They will continue to degrade over time, depending on how much exposure they had initially and how much they get over time, a process called ghoulification. Ghouls can, though, do normal human things like talk, fight, eat, sleep, and they can act completely normal. It would just be their appearance that is generally affected, and obviously their own personal health situation, obviously. Eventually, though, the radiation does decay the flesh and rot their physical bodies. However, the brain isn't usually affected at anywhere near the same rate, and over years and years, they eventually lose their mental function and become what we know as feral ghouls. There are actually 3 types of ghouls within the Fallout universe. The regular ones, who are just these radiated people, but then there are the feral ghouls, who are, like they say in the name, completely feral over time. These ones have completely lost their human mental faculties and are, realistically, rabid. They attack everything in sight and are clearly more mutated and physically degraded than usual ghouls. They generally live in packs and shamble around acting as they would have in life, kind of like how we would think of zombies acting, going to old haunts, stuff like that. The last is the most dangerous, the glowing ones, who are so irradiated that they have bioluminescence and give off a huge amount of radiation just from their person. These are highly aggressive as well, and both feral and glowing ghouls are super dangerous within the Fallout universe. However, I'm going to go back to normal ghouls, as this is kind of the standard. I mentioned that they became this way due to radiation, but there is another way to become a ghoul, such as genetic experimentation, which is rife within the Fallout universe, due to the corruption from those at vault-tec, the company that ran the Fallout nuclear vaults, where chosen people were meant to be safe, but actually were all means for different human experiments. Because of this, there was an evolutionary virus, or FEV, too, which also led to people becoming ghouls. All ghouls have massively expanded lifespans, living for sometimes centuries in the wasteland because of their prolonged and intense exposure, as well as having supercharged regeneration of tissue if they're injured. It's almost as if they are being completely sustained by the radiation, with a group of ghouls even being reportedly able to trap energy from lightning in their bodies and discharge it at will, or even a group of them being completely flayed alive and still be able to live completely normal lives afterwards. For context, you don't usually survive being flayed. There are also some benefits. They are immune to disease and direct degenerative effects of radiation. Although too much radiation can evolve them into feral or glowing ghouls faster. However, they are not immune to conditions such as dementia, cataracts, arthritis, glaucoma, as well as losing your voice through the complete degradation of your larynx and vocal cords. Ghouls also need little food and water, able to survive for much longer without these than normal people. Because of their lack of noses, they're also able to eat food that would generally repulse normal humans because they can't smell, and often engage in cannibalism just because they can, basically. However, they do have a diminished ability to absorb nutrients from all of these, as well as from drugs, so they would need double doses of any medications or recreational drugs to feel any effect of them. As I said earlier though, they do have that increased regeneration of tissue, so typically they don't need medication and they don't need any painkillers. It would just eventually heal itself, but some of them are known to take recreational drugs. I certainly would in a wasteland scenario, to be completely frank. There are also some medications to treat radiation in the Fallout universe, such as Rad-X and Rad-Away. However, this doesn't have much of an effect on ghouls because they simply are too far gone. However, it can help them fight off the feralization that is eventually coming and keep them alive for a little bit longer with all of their mental faculties intact. So, how could you treat a ghoul? You can kind of treat one. This was added to the lore much later and is present within the series, but a chemical called the Fix was founded in the 23rd century, which stops the degenerative process and is administered through an inhaler. This can allow ghouls to live for decades, but is expensive and super rare to find. However, can you kill them? Yeah, they're just like normal people, and you can kill them in the exact same way. However, you would probably need to ensure they're dead first, because if you do what you think is a fatal move on them, there is a risk that they may not be dead, and then they'll just regenerate, so make sure you've actually made a killing blow before you move on. Ghouls are found all over the wasteland of the world post the bombs being dropped in 2077, but feral ghouls can be found in caves, abandoned buildings and the underground typically too. Also, one last thing is that you should never call a ghoul a zombie or an abomination. It's seen as derogatory, they don't really like it. But apparently, the word ghoul is okay. I wouldn't want to be called any of them, but you know, there's just a note there. So, moving on to etymology, the word ghoul actually comes from a mythical creature in reality. It's a demon-like or monstrous human who eats human flesh, going back to a pre-Islamic civilization in the Middle East. It's used as a derogatory term, even now, to describe someone who enjoys the macabre or whose occupation deals with death, such as a grave digger or a funeral director, for instance. It can also be used to refer to someone who looks grave, gaunt, or deathly, which is where this comes from in the Fallout universe at least. Just as a side note, I will cover the actual Arabic origin ghouls at some point, just as I've mentioned them now. But just to be clear, this is a whole different monster from an actual mythology that we'll cover another time, rather than the fictional one I'm doing now. For history, we do have this in two parts, so the actual history of them within the Fallout universe, and the backstory to their creation within a game. So we'll stay within IP first. It's important to know that in Fallout, the atomic bombs were dropped, as I mentioned earlier, in 2077. So way ahead of where we are now in 2026, although I had a thought whilst writing this, and I might still be alive in 2077, which is kind of weird to think about. But anyway, some people went and lived in these experimental vaults. Some went underground, and some weren't able to or fortunate enough to do either. The few survivors from this were either completely ghoulified or lived for a very short time before dying from the exposure / radiation / the atomic blast. However, most ghouls came from the survivors, where they would drink irradiated water, eat irradiated food, spend too much time outside in highly irradiated areas, or fall into irradiated water. But there are a few examples of ghouls who are still alive from before the bombs dropped, such as the titular The Ghoul from the game and TV series, and I'm going to say, played by my favourite Walton Goggins, who was the spokesperson for the vaults and a movie star before the bombs dropped, meaning that when we find the characters in 2296, he's been alive for nearly 300 years at this point. The Fallout timeline is that the series is the latest point in the timeline so far, with Fallout 76 set in 2102, Fallout 1 in 2161, Fallout 3 in 2277, Fallout New Vegas in 2281, and Fallout 4 in 2287, with the Ghoul actually making an appearance in Fallout 76. But ghouls within all of the Fallout games are there, and they are interactable and sometimes even playable characters. Moving on to developing the universe, the ghouls were inspired by real-life survivors of nuclear war, such as the survivors of Chernobyl in Ukraine, where a power plant accident leaked radiation over most of Europe in 1986, killing around 4,000 people and affecting millions worldwide with radiation. As well as this, the 1945 atomic bombings on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, the only ever usage of atomic bombs in warfare ever. This killed 246,000 people and affected millions more across Asia, leaving all of these places as complete dead zones and immensely dangerous to humans to this day. The effect of the radiation on the people of Chernobyl, Nagasaki and Hiroshima were the inspiration of the ghouls for Fallout, as the injuries and effects on the human body would be similar to what I've described, with soft tissues being affected on noses and ears, as well as the degradation of flesh on the face and severe burns across the whole body, as well as sterilisation, or at least immense damage to the reproductive system, as well as cancer-causing cell spikes. A quick note from me personally, because we all live in the real world and we must do, so I'll pull you back to reality for a second. All of these real-life incidents are a stark reminder of the devastating effects of nuclear war in reality. The world, right now in 2026, is a scary place, and there are threats of this happening again. And actually, this topic highlights how important it is to make sure that what happened in Nagasaki and Hiroshima never happens again, which we can all fight against with our votes and standing up for all humans, animals and our planet, no matter what they look like, what god they believe in, or where they come from. It's really important to fight for that, and I know this got political and real for a second for a Mythical Monsters podcast, but I have a voice and a platform, and I have a responsibility to use it to try and make a difference. So I hope you forgive this little PSA, but I do just think it's very, very important to remember that we're all here together and we're all one race, and one human race at that. Now, moving on to something more cheerful, modern media. It's a weird one whenever we do a fantasy and fiction one, because they are usually stuck in this one universe, IP or franchise. However, with Ghouls, we can kind of talk about nuclear fallout movies too. So I've popped a load of nuclear war media in here, which is a horrible sentence to say. For art though, it's just on the Ghouls, and have a look at fan art of them from Fallout. There's also a whole load of concept art that you can look at from the games as well, from when they were developing them, so I'd recommend it. In movies, we have Day 1, Buck Rogers in 25th Century, 20 Days After, Battle Truck, Dead Man's Letters, Zardoz, Genesis 2, The Book of Eli, Rats, Night of Terror, Oppenheimer, Creepazoids, 5, and Iron Sky. For TV, we have Fallout, The 100, The Incredible Hulk, Sacred Games, Vigil, Warriors of the Deep, Operation Buffalo, The Peripheral, Adventure Time, Jericho, The Man in the High Castle, Terror and Resonance, Whoops Apocalypse, Atom Squad, Dragonflies, Oppenheimer, Barefoot Jen, War and Remembrance, Doctor Who, Flanders Company, The Red Green Show, Ultraman, The X-Files, The Simpsons, Total Drama Island, Captain Planet and the Planeteers, Cockroaches, The Twilight Zone, and The Mask. Now moving on to video games, we have ones such as Fallout, Aquanox, Duke Nukem, Metro 2023, Speed Kills, 2027, Vector Thrust, Shin Megami Tensei, Mercs of Boom, Might and Magic, Shardlight, Atomic Ops, Final Fantasy, 7 Days to Die, After Armageddon Gaiden, Splatoon, Anno Domini, Sky Hill, The Fall Last Days of Gaia, Xenogears, Archimedium Dynasty, Wargame European Escalation, Sheltered, Rad, Nuclear Throne, Far Cry New Dawn, Mutant Football League, I Was a Teenage Exocolonist, Halo, Steel Assault, Breath of Death 7, and After the War. My book recommendation for this week is not for a monster book, but it's actually really interesting about the topic of nuclear war, which fits into this. So there's After the Blast, a comprehensive scenario of nuclear war and its global impact by Jessica Rivera, for a really good look into actual research around what would happen during nuclear warfare. Or you can have a look at Fallout, a journey through the nuclear age, from the atom bomb to radioactive waste by Fred Pierce, for a full look into radioactivity history, as well as that impact on the world. But now it's time for Do I Think They Existed? No, obviously. I mean, I said it from the get-go that this would be fictional, and they're from Fallout. I've made so many references to that. So I hope I've made that clear enough, and you're like, well, Erin, of course not. However, whilst they're definitely not real now, they are inspired by some of the states of radiation burns and extreme radiation survival, which does give real people these aesthetics, just not any of the powers that ghouls have in the Fallout universe. In reality, we know what radiation does to people, and the likelihood of survival is still immensely small. But on a positive note, humans are known to survive without noses and ears, and we see this in cancer and burn patients, which might resemble the ghoul look, but I mean that in the kindest way possible. If you're a fan of the Fallout game series as well as the TV show, you will know more about the vaults, and I think this is probably the most screwed up thing that happens within this universe. A fake experimentational haven from the Fallout where each one is a different and torturous, horrible future is a more awful idea to me, honestly. For full transparency, I've actually only played a bit of Fallout 4 because loads of my friends and family will tell you that I am so awful at aiming. I may be a gamer, but I am so bad at it. And whilst Bioshock is one of my favourite game series of all time, I struggle with first-person shooters, let alone third-person shooters. Please, just give me a staff and some spells and a sword and I'm good. But guns? Nah. I'm a really bad shot, hence my aversion to the Fallout series. But the show's really good. I love the lore and the history within it, so that's why I thought this one would be a fun one to cover. And I know it's been watched by most people, so, why not? I think the Ghoul is pretty cool, bar all the horrible things he does. And ghoulification is just a side effect of being in the wasteland within this universe, so it is what it is, I suppose. But what do you think? Would there be ghouls if we did have a nuclear situation? Let me know on social media, I would love to know what you think about this one. What a fun one! And anything where I can talk about my beloved Walton Goggins, who is so underrated and fantastic, you should watch him in everything he does. And I highly recommend The Righteous Gemstones if you're into religious slander and comedy. It's very, very funny. So, I hope you enjoyed popping into this universe with me, and I hope it didn't freak you out too much with my idea of nuclear war dismissal talk. I am laughing nervously here, honestly, but I still think it's important, so, I'll preach my little thing and then no obligation to listen to me. Next week, we are heading on over to the beautiful land of Japan, though, for a mystical hybrid monster. I want you to try and keep your dreams nice and cosy and keep them to yourselves because you've got to hide them away from the Dream Eater, Baku, next week. For now, though, thank you so much for listening. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give it a rating on the service you are listening on. I've got loads of social media for any questions or suggestions on what monsters to cover next, and I'd really love to hear from you. The social media handles for TikTok, YouTube and Instagram are Myth Monsters Podcast, the Twitter is Myth Monsters Pod, and the blue sky is just Myth Monsters. But all of our content can be found at mythmonsters.co.uk, and you can also find us on Good Pods, Buy Me a Coffee and Patreon if you want to help me fund the podcast too. Come join the fun though, share this with your pals. They might love me as much as you do. But for now, stay spooky, and I'll see you later, babes.